This is part 3 of our seminar, so everyone be welcome. And on this part, we will examine the other verses that we kind of jumped on the second chapter. So in the last week, right, in the second part of the week, of the second part of the course, we studied the 6 questions the sage asked Sukadeva Goswami and also their answers, right? So here are the 6 questions. So one, what is the ultimate good for all people? And the answer is loving, unmotivated, and uninterrupted devotional service to the Lord. And this was answered on 126, right? What is second question was, what is the essence of the scriptures? And the answer is the process of devotional service is the essence, right? There is nothing superior. By practicing devotional service, one develops causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And this answer was given on Srimad Bhagavatam 127. And we saw also 128, 129, and 110 that are connected also. Then the third question, why did Krishna appear as the son of Devaki, right? And the answer is to give association to his devotees and benefit all people who are in the mode of goodness, right? And in the process, he also kills the demons and reestablishes the principles of Dharma. But these are actually secondary reasons, right? And this was answered on 1 to 34, last verse of the chapter. And then number 4, what are the activities of the Lord connected with the creation of the material universes? And the answer is that as Mahavishnu, he creates the material universes. As Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he enters inside each universe and becomes the father of Brahma. And as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, he lays down on the ocean of milk and he permeates everything as Paramatma, right? And this answer was given on 1 to 30 to 33, right? And then there are questions 5 and 6 that are answered later on the third chapter. Question number 5 is, what are the incarnations of the Lord and his pastime and their pastimes? This is answered on the most of the verses of the third chapter. And number 6, what became the shelter of the religious principles after Krishna left our planet? And the answer is the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The Srimad Bhagavatam gives light to the people of Kali Yuga who lost their spiritual vision due to the darkness of this age, right? And this is answered on 1343. Okay, so we can see that the verses from the beginning of the second chapter, from 1 to 6 to 1 to 10, they answer the first 2 questions, right? And then the last verses of the second chapter, from 1 to 30 to 1 to 34, they answer the next 2 questions, right? But then, what about the other verses? From 1 to 11 to 1 to 29. No? What are what these verses speak about, right? And that's what we are going to uh, that's what we are going to see today. That's what we're going to speak about today. So today we are going to examine many important verses in the second chapter. And we are just going to go one by one, these different verses, because they are all very important verses, because they speak about the process of devotional service in details, right? We understand that devotional service is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, the conclusion of the Vedas. So we should try to learn something about it, right? So, okay, important verses in the second chapter. So, after answering that the process of devotional service is the essence of all scriptures and explaining that the goal of performing our duties is to gradually elevate ourselves to that platform, right? Then Sutta Goswami, he describes the process of devotional service in more detail, right? This is still second chapter. So in one sense, all these verses of the second chapter that we will see today, they are still part of the second question, right? Explaining about devotional service. But, to make it easier to follow, we first studied the short answers for all the questions, right? For all the 6 questions. And now we will study details of the process of devotional service that are given in the second chapter, right? In the following verses. So these verses they describe how can we attain this ultimate goal of devotional service and how to surpass, all the difficulties that we come upon on this path of devotional service. So it's very relevant for us, right? That's what we are trying to do, right? So these verses they are all significant. So today we will go slowly. We'll just go one by one each verse and study the meaning of all these verses. So first verse, 1 to 11, this is very important. This is a verse that you may want to memorize. So if you are memorizing, the most important verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, that's one verse that, you could, consider including in your list because that's a very important verse. So this verse says, Vadanti tat tatva vidas tatvam yagyam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sabjate. So the translation is that learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, they call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So non-dual substance means the absolute truth is just one, but it has 3 aspects: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So what does it mean? So different transcendentalists, they have different ideas about God, right? You put 2 persons of 2 different religions, they are very rarely they are going to agree, right? They are always going to have differences. So different transcendentalists, they have different ideas about God. So to some, like the impersonalists, God is just a formless spirit that is eternal and transcendental to the material world, right? That's all. To others, the yogis, God has a form and he is situated inside the heart. For a devotee, right, a bhakta, however, God is a blue boy who plays the flute and cultivate so many rasas, so many loving relationships with his devotees. And at first, these 3 ideas they may appear contradictory, right? To say at least. 3 complete different ideas about what God is. But that's actually not the case, and that's what this verse is revealing. God has these 3 aspects simultaneously, and that's the whole point here. So the impersonal Brahmajyoti is just the effulgence of his body, right? That's all. This light of the Brahmajyoti is just the effulgence of the body of Krishna. Paramatma is his localized aspect, right? He's present everywhere. And the Bhagavan aspect is the complete aspect of God as a person who performs, wonderful activities. So Paramatma also includes Brahman realization, and Bhagavan realization, it includes all 3 aspects simultaneously, right? In other words, Brahman realization is limited, Paramatma realization is a little more, includes Brahman realization and something more, and Bhagavan realization includes everything, including the other 2 aspects, right? So Prabhupada gives an interesting example, an interesting analogy in this sense, that he gives the example that Brahman realization is just like looking at a mountain from very far away, right? And then you see just some haze, covered by clouds. Just some, you don't know what it is because you are so far. Paramatma realization is like seeing the same mountain a little closer, right? So you can see the form of the mountain and so on, but without much detail. And Bhagavan realization is comparable to someone going up the mountain, and meeting the people there, interacting, see everything from close. So this verse, it is very useful to contest all kinds of impersonal philosophies and reinforce this correct conclusion about the absolute truth, that the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas is a personal God, is not just Brahman, right? And that's the conclusion of Vyasadeva, right? Although Sutta Goswami is speaking, but Vyasadeva, he agrees with this conclusion because he puts in his Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's his conclusion also. And then in his purport, Prabhupada, of this verse, Prabhupada mentions that less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization. But those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. So they understand God is just one, but there are these three different angles of vision, right? So, so the main point about this verse, right, is that devotional service is not just a process meant for sentimental people, just like some impersonalists sometimes they like to promote, but that's actually the only perfect method to fully understand God, right? Everyone can understand God, to a certain extent, but if one wants to fully understand God, he needs to follow the process of devotional service. And that's the conclusion of Vyasadeva, the conclusion of the Vedas, right? And this is explained a little more in the next verse. Then we go to 1 to 12. And this verse says, the seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Sruti. Right? So, okay, what does this one mean? So, the point of the second verse is that by studying Vedic knowledge, one can develop knowledge and detachment, right? By studying the Vedas, one can develop these two things. So when one becomes successful in this study of the Vedas, then he or she may come to the platform of devotional service, right? And then when one finally becomes successful in that, right, in the platform of devotional service, then he may finally realize the absolute truth fully, completely, right? So all the other processes recommended in the Vedas, like cultivation of spiritual knowledge, renunciation, practices of austerities, and so on, like so many things, they have just the goal of gradually elevating a person to the platform of devotional service. Therefore, if a person can somehow become situated in serving Krishna, right? Somehow or other, he starts serving Krishna, then it's concluded that he already graduated in the other processes because he's like on the top, right? If one is studying in the university, you presume that he graduated in school, right? Because if he didn't graduate in school, he will not be in the university, right? So the fact that he is in the university studying there, it's a proof by itself that he finished school, right? So if one achieves this goal of devotional service, this means he passed through all the other previous stages. He qualified in all the previous stages. And this is indicated more clearly even in the next verse, 1:12-13. So the verse says, O best among the twice born, right? O best of the Brahmanas, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation, according to case divisions and orders of life, or in other words, Varnashrama, is to please the personality of Godhead, right? So this shows again that this is the conclusion of the Vedas. I'm sorry. So there are different classes of devotees, right? They are all devotees. They are elevated because they are trying to serve Krishna, right? But at the same time, different different devotees they differ in their level of realization, right? So they're not all in the same level, although all of them are exalted. So in his purport to this verse here, 1-13, Prabhupada explains that there are three classes of devotees. Then the third class devotees, they are still attached, to material association. that is struggling with material desire. Like, so then for them or for us, most of us probably, apart from the basic process of, hearing and chanting, deity worship in the temple, according to the rules and regulations, is strongly recommended. So if a devotee can go regularly to the temple, be involved in the services there, see the deities and so on, then he or she can gradually advance, right, in a very sure way. So, okay, this is the third class devotee. Then there is the second class devotees. And these are devotees who become free from material association, and they learn to properly behave toward everyone, toward the Lord, toward other devotees, toward innocent people who they can help, to progress in spiritual life, and to the angels. And on this platform, right, on the second platform, one becomes gradually knowledgeable in the scriptures. He starts understanding well the scriptures. And as a result, he can help others to progress in Krishna consciousness, right? So, and by doing that, by helping others, he increases his own realization and he progresses further, right? That's how he continues advancing. And then finally, we have the first class devotee. And that's the one who develops love for Krishna, right? So, because in this stage, one loses interest in material activities, one becomes peaceful, right? And thus he can concentrate in chanting, in developing his personal relationship with Krishna, right? However, many devotees on this platform, like pure devotees, they decide to continue preaching and helping others. And these are actually, the best of all. These are the highest devotees of all. These pure devotees who continue preaching. So Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned that some devotees, they like to chant and others like to preach. However, some devotees, they like to chant and also to preach, right? They achieve perfection on both. And these are the best. That's Prabhupada speaking. So in other words, the different processes taught in the Vedas, they have the goal of simply elevating one to the platform of devotional service, right? And then when one finally comes to the devotional platform, then there is further work to be done, progressing through these three categories of devotional service, all the way to the platform of pure love for Krishna. And that's the supreme goal. Now, after this, there is nothing more to be achieved. That's the goal, the final goal of the Vedas. So, having understood that devotional service is the ultimate goal, then we come to verse 14, right? And this verse, it describes the process in itself. In other words, what we should do when we decide to serve Krishna, right? Because up to here we are speaking about how devotional service is so wonderful, is the conclusion of the Vedas, the goal of life, and so on. Okay. After we accept that, then what should I do? What exactly should I do, to do this devotional service? And this verse starts explaining about that. So the verse says, therefore, with one pointed attention, like fixed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of devotees. So, apart from our material desires, another like formidable obstacle in your spiritual path is karma, right? Our karma is compared to a bunch of knots in a rope that binds us to this material world. So karma makes us take birth in a certain place, become part of a certain family, live in a certain place, have a certain circle of friends, work on a certain job, have certain, positive and negative personal characteristics, and so on. This is all determined by karma. So we always have a certain degree of choice, of course, but it's actually much more limited than we like to think. Actually, we are very strongly tied to certain situations because of our previous karma. So, for example, we may complain that, oh, I don't have enough time to practice spiritual life. I have to struggle, so hard to live, work so much. I live so far away from the temple. No, I can't go to the programs. My wife or husband is not a devotee. Or the other relatives don't like that I'm devotee. The other people, they are mean to me. They cheat me. I can't make friends and I can't wake up early to chant, because I'm so sleepy. My mind is so unstable, and so on. Right? We may complain that so many difficulties, so many obstacles in your devotional service. However, what we may fail to realize is that most of these obstacles, it comes from our previous karma, right? So in this way, karma, more often than not, it puts us in situations that are unfavorable for our devotional service. So we need to get rid of it so we can get rid of these situations. But that's not the worst part. The worst part, the scariest of all, is that karma affects the way we think. And this is really scary because the values and the mental paradigms that we have, the way we think, that's also the result of our past actions. That's also the result of my karma. Uh, and no, so in this way, karma can make, everything together. Karma can make things quite hard for us when we speak about, understanding spiritual knowledge and practicing spiritual life. And then what is the solution, right? Apart from crying, of course, what can I do? What should I do about that? So the answer is that we have to break through this, tangle of knots of karma and gradually free ourselves from these impediments. Only when this knot of the previous karma is destroyed, we finally gain the freedom to change our lives, to, fix things. And how can we do that? It's becoming interesting, right? Now we identify the problem, and now we are coming towards a solution to it. So the next verse gives a little bit more details of how to do that. It says that with sword in hands, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? Right? So the sword mentioned here is transcendental knowledge. And this transcendental knowledge must be combined with devotional service. Right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that we should control the mind using the intelligence, right? But later he says that just like the mind and the senses, the intelligence is also occupied by lust. And thus, just like the mind, the intelligence also can't be trusted. So at first, it may appear like a contradiction, right? But it's not so. So the point is that the material intelligence is mainly subservient to the mind. It mainly works to satisfy the different material desires that come from the mind, right? Just running here and there. So when Krishna says that we should control the mind using intelligence, he means a different type of intelligence, and that's spiritual intelligence. And this spiritual intelligence, in turn, it comes from hearing from the scriptures and receiving instructions from pure devotees of the Lord. So, if we hear something, genuine, right, coming from Krishna, and we accept it, then we gradually develop our spiritual intelligence. And this spiritual intelligence, in turn, it helps us to control the mind, right? So, so the same spiritual intelligence, when used to engage in spiritual activities, right, chanting and remembrance of the Lord, it becomes also this sword that can help us to cut through these knots of karma, the sword that this verse is speaking about, right, freeing us from this material world. Okay. So we understand that hearing is the way out, right? Is the sword. It allows us to get the swords that we can use to free ourselves. However, the problem is that often we don't have a taste for hearing, right? Just like we may not have a taste for chanting or doing other spiritual activities. So, what I do then, right? If I don't have taste. And then we come to the next verse. You see, these verses, they are a sequence. They build up, right? They explain what the problem is, and then verse by verse, the solution is given. How we can get out of this material world. Very useful, right? So, okay, then we come to the next verse, 16. So this verse answers that, O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, right? Completely pure, great service is done. And by such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. He gets taste for hearing about Krishna. So, what the verse is speaking. So amongst all types of devotees, pure devotees who accept like personal inconveniences to spread, Krishna's messages, they are the most dear of all, most dear of all to Krishna. And by serving such devotees, we can gradually develop their qualities, and thus we acquire a taste for hearing about Krishna. You see, that's how we can get this taste. So this happens because Krishna feels indebted when we offer respects or we try to assist, his dear servants, in any way. And thus he becomes inclined to more directly help us to come closer to him. So Srila Prabhupada explains that it may be very difficult to please a very rich and powerful man, right? But if one can please his child by just giving, a small sweet, then he immediately gets his favor, right? Immediately this powerful man becomes grateful to him. So similarly, it may be difficult to directly approach Krishna, but his pure devotees, they are much more accessible, right? So that's the way to get there. And Prabhupada explains this point on his purport to the same verse. So Prabhupada says that the servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. The Lord is more pleased when he sees that his servants are properly respected, because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord, and so are very dear to the Lord. The Lord declares in the Bhagavad Gita 1869 that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glories. By serving the servants of the Lord, one gradually gets the quality of such servants, and thus one becomes qualified to hear the glories of God. Interesting, right? So one may argue that apart from acquiring, a taste, for hearing and chanting, there is still another, very formidable obstacle, which is the desire for material enjoyment, right? That's another one that we may complain about. And even advanced devotees, sometimes they may fall down. So what is the hope for us, right? And the next verse answers this. 17. So the verse says that Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's hearts, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, he cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So see, we were complaining about material desires, and here the answer comes. Who can clean these material desires from the heart? So the point here is that once we acquire a taste for hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, then our path back to Godhead becomes wide open, right? It becomes open to us. Because by seeing this sincerity, Krishna himself, right, from inside the heart as Paramatma, he starts to clean these material desires. And as a result, we become capable of, focusing in hearing and chanting, right? Actually, Krishna is capable of clearing the material desires of everyone, right? He's all powerful. But he only does that when one becomes sincere in the spiritual path. Because the problem is that often we want to hold to our bad habits, to our material desires, right? We have some hope, of satisfying these desires in the future, or maybe doing it, secretly. And because we are still holding to such desires, Krishna doesn't clean them away, even if we are chanting. Because holding to them is a result of a conscious choice. I choose to hold on to these desires. And Krishna respects this choice. So, okay, you want, no problem. I will keep it, right? So as we become more sincere, by following the process of hearing and chanting and serving advanced devotees and hearing, transcendental knowledge from them, we gradually become more sincere. And then we start to give up these material desires. And as a result, Krishna starts to clean them away from the heart. You see, that's how it works. And Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, he says there, quote, that the Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees, right? He reciprocates when he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord and has thus become eager to hear about him. The Lord acts from within, right? As Paramatma, from within the devotee. And in such a way, the devotee may easily go back to him, like back to Godhead. So the Lord is more anxious to take us back to his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead, right? Prabhupada it's quite honest, right? Only a few men want to go back to Godhead, like few men and a few women, actually. Like men means women also. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects, right? So that's the end of the quote. So, after we become eager to hear, right, the cleaning of the material desires from the heart starts, right? And then, okay, what is the next step? And this is, of course, described in the next verse. And that's another very important verse. That's another verse that you may want to memorize. So this is 1, 2, 18. Nastra prayeshu abhadreshu nicham bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamais loke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. So the verse says that by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, right? And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact, right? So this verse it mentions a Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? Regularly serving the Bhagavata, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya. So Srila Prabhupada explains that there are two Bhagavatas. There is the book Bhagavat, right, Srimad Bhagavatam, and there is the devotee Bhagavat, right, the pure devotee. And as he explains, right, Prabhupada says in the purport that a devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata, because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata. And the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical, right? That's the quote of Prabhupada. Interesting, right? So, by associating with these two Bhagavatas, we can progress in the path of devotion. And as Srila Prabhupada mentions, another quote from Prabhupada, he says that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Right? Interesting, right? So, okay, so that's the end of the quote. So, Srila Prabhupada explains that by almost completely destroyed, right? Because it says, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Why not completely? Why almost? So Srila Prabhupada explains that by almost completely destroyed, Nasta Prayesho, Srila Sutta Goswami, he means about 75% of all inauspicious things. So almost completely. So, and this includes, material desires, anarthas, and so on, right? So 70% of all of this is eliminated from the heart. And this gives us a chance of becoming fixed in the process of loving devotional service to the Lord. And that's Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki, right? This gives us a chance of really starting devotional service. So the obstacles, they become much smaller. So once we become strongly fixed, then we can continue in our process of hearing, chanting, and spreading Krishna consciousness without interruption, right? Now we can become more fixed because the obstacles they become much weaker. And of course, by doing this, this can bring us to the ultimate perfection, right? And like one of the problems is that often we practice devotional service as a series of sprints, right? Short runs. So we go to Mangalartik, a few days, very enthusiastic, and then we stop. We start chanting, 64 rounds, for a few days, very enthusiastically, and then we stop, right? We go to distribute books, Haribo, let me save the world, for a few days, and then we stop. Then we go to a festival and we become so enthusiastic, right? And then we go back home and we become apathetic, right? We stop, and so on, right? And of course, these things, it's good. It can help us in the beginning, right? But progressing to advanced stages of devotional service requires attaining stability in your practice. So stability is very, very important. As soon as we want to become, a little bit more advanced, we come to this point of achieving stability in your service. Because this is already declared before. Devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self, right? So stability. And this passage, it teaches us how to reach this level. So, okay, so what happens when we finally reach this level of irrevocable devotional service, right? What are the effects? What happens? So the effects are described on the next verse, 19. So it says here that as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy, right? Everyone wants to be happy, right? And that's the secret of happiness. So, as this verse describes, the visible result of achieving this level is that one becomes completely happy, right? There is no more unhappiness in his life. He's fully happy. But this, however, doesn't come by magic, right? So Prabhupada explains that the original position of the soul is to be always fully satisfied in spiritual bliss, right? That's what the soul is. And this spiritual bliss is different from the satisfaction of a foolish person who may be always happy but just because of ignorance, right? Is different. Instead, a devotee in such stage, he is happy due to realizing his constitutional position and becoming free from material influence. So the source of his happiness is different. So the reason we feel, miserable, in conditioned life is due to the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance, right? Rajaguna, Tamaguna. And these lower modes, they cover our original spiritual knowledge and makes us identify with the body and become absorbed in material activities under the influence of lust, anger, etc. Right? And material activities, they are based on attachment, and they always result in bewilderment, like, uh, and frustration. Because in the material world, everything is unstable and temporary, right? And then as a result, we are always anxious about losing what we have and about not attaining what we want, right? And therefore we are always lamenting and under illusion and so on. But when we become fixed in the platform of devotional service, then we finally become free from this influence of passion and ignorance. And then, as a consequence, we become free from lust, from desires, from hankering, material desires like hankering, and so on. And with this, and that's the most amazing part, with this, our unhappiness and lamentation, it disappears. And then first we become situated in the mode of goodness, right? And then later we transcend even the mode of goodness and we become situated in the transcendental platform. And then when we finally achieve this transcendental platform, our devotional service matures and we become able to see Krishna face to face, right? This will happen one day. We don't know when, depends on us, but one day this will happen. We will see Krishna face to face. And then there is another quote where Prabhupada explains this point. So, okay, quote, the soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter, and as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. The devotee is more fixed. The devotee is fixed, right? At once in the mode of goodness. And then he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva, or Suddha sattva, right? Pure goodness. Only in the Suddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord, right? That's the end of the quote. So, Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, he says that in the Bhagavad Gita, that one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful, right? And he never laments or desires to have anything. And he is equally disposed toward every living entity. And in that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So he's describing this stage of, becoming free from the influence of the three modes, right? The stage of, purity. So as we can see, there is a progression, right, on the path of devotional service that is described in these different verses. So by serving pure devotees, we get some taste for, hearing and chanting. And by this taste, we become regularly in our practice, right? And this regular practice, right? By this regular practice, right? By doing this, we reach the stage where we become almost cleansed, right? What this verse speaks about. Verse 18 speaks about. And this helps us to improve our practice and remain fixed. And then eventually we we reach this platform of irrevocable loving service that is described here in this verse, right? And when this happens, the influence of passion and ignorance disappears, and we become completely happy in the transcendental platform, right? And from there, we progress further, and we go up to the point of attaining love for Krishna, right? Haribol. And in his purport to this verse, Prabhupada mentions very interesting point that he makes, that he says that for a devotee, the entire world is as good as Vaikuntha, or the spiritual sky, right? Interesting, right? Interesting point. This, of course, describes the position of a pure devotee, right? Who is in the transcendental platform. Just like when Prabhupada says that a devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness and therefore he harms no one. Or when he mentions that a pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul, and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana, right? So here, in all these examples, he's speaking about a pure devotee. So we tend to use the words devotee or Vaishnava quite like loosely, right? To describe, anyone who is, who started in the process of devotional service. No matter, how imperfect this person may be. But Prabhupada often uses these words in the full meaning, right? Meaning a pure devotee who attained this stage of being situated in the transcendental platform. So the influence of the modes of passion and ignorance is a great like hindrance to our spiritual progress, right? It makes things very slow for us. And not only that, it also makes us feel miserable, right? That's another problem. So that's one of the reasons Krishna explains so much about the three modes in the Bhagavad Gita. So we can learn to recognize, the attitudes, the habits, the ideas which are connected with the lower modes, and then gradually become free from them, right? We often have this idea that, oh, it's so hard to advance in spiritual life, right? What to say about becoming a pure devotee. But that's because we are struggling with the influence of the lower modes. As long as we are under the lower modes, our progress is very slow. And we have this impression that, oh, I'm never going to reach to go there, right? But when we can finally become free from them, from rajas and tamas, then our progress becomes much faster, right? So that's the point. It goes very slowly up to a certain point when we become free from the lower modes. After we pass this point, then it goes much faster. And then we come to the last two verses of this passage that describes, details about the process of devotional service. So this is the conclusion here. So thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Thus, the knot in the heart, remember the knot in the heart is karma. Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings, right? Everything that is negative are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as the master, right? So spiritual knowledge is absorbed in two stages, right? We get spiritual knowledge in two stages. First, we get some information, right? By reading some book, by hearing from someone else, and this is called jnana. And later, we realize it, right? That's vijnana. So simply like book knowledge has actually limited application in our practical lives because it's real difficult to relate, this theoretical knowledge to practical situations and or even practically understand this knowledge that we are reading. However, when this knowledge is realized, right, when it becomes vijnana, it suddenly becomes real. Then we can finally see what it means and finally see how to use it, how to apply it in practical situations of life, right? However, this realization, this vijnana, it doesn't come automatically. It comes from the spiritual master, from saintly Vaishnavas, and from the Lord inside our hearts. And it also requires us to have the necessary level of purification. Because, a broken glass can't hold any water, right? Even if you pour, liters and liters of water on this broken glass, the glass will not hold any of it, right? It will just go to the sides. So we may receive, lots of mercy, but we still need to have, the necessary qualifications to be able to hold this mercy, right? So this qualification is gradually attained, right? It comes little by little. And it becomes prominent when we achieve this stage of unalloyed goodness that is mentioned here in this verse. So it happened, like the problem, right, is that passion and ignorance are not just detrimental in the sense of, making us feel miserable, right? make us feel like becoming engulfed, in hankering and lamentation. But another problem is that it also covers our capacity to understand spiritual knowledge, right? That's another problem. It blocks or getting, spiritual knowledge. And as long as we are strongly influenced by passion and ignorance, we see and hear everything through the filter of these two modes, right? And apart from that, intelligence contaminated by passion and ignorance, it becomes flat, right? It becomes like a chapati. It works under the duality of good and bad, black and white, hot and cold, and so on, right? There is always only two sides. And in this way, it becomes incapable of understanding the delicate details of transcendental knowledge, right? So while we are in passion and ignorance, it's very difficult to understand anything, but our comprehension improves, dramatically when we reach the mode of goodness. And it becomes fully developed when we reach this transcendental state of, Suddha Sattva or pure goodness, right? So quite interesting points, right? So in this way, one cuts to pieces, all misgivings, and this knot of material illusion inside the heart is destroyed, right? And then one finally realizes the Lord in truth. And this completely stops, karma. It completely stops this chain of actions and reactions that binds us to this material world, right? And more specifically, what exactly is this knot of illusion in the heart? That is karma, okay, but there is another thing. So this knot is called ahankara. And this is a very important topic to understand. Ahankara means false ego, right? So this is the false ego that makes us refuse our eternal position as servants of Krishna, right? Prabhupada explains the original position of the soul is pure soul, servant of Krishna. This ahankara is the thing, is this false ego that makes us refuse this eternal position, right? Makes us accept some other identity different from my real identity. So under the spell of false ego, we accept different material identities, right? So false ego, it ties us very firmly to this material world, making us incapable of understanding the difference between spirit and matter. And this false ego, it can manifest in so many different levels and is often very difficult to even notice what to say about, give it up, right? So, for example, a devotee may be chanting and studying, the scriptures for many years, repeating, I'm not the body, I'm not the body, it's me, yata. But then he may reveal himself as a nationalist when his country goes to war. You see, false ego there. I belong to this country, right? A senior lady, another example, she may have studied, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam multiple times, but still she may become angry when some, young Prabhu, comes and tells, ladies are less intelligent, because she may still identify with this position. I'm a lady. So when someone speaks badly about ladies, she becomes offended, right? So see, these identifications with these different material labels, they go very deep in the heart. They're very difficult to give up completely. However, when this knot of ahankara, right, this knot that ties, spirit to matter is finally, cut of the heart, then all doubts, they are cleared off. And then one can finally see himself as an eternal spirit soul and realize, his eternal relationship with the Lord. And at this stage, the last vestiges of karma are destroyed and one becomes, completely free, right? And even if one is still living in this material world, one acts, in the transcendental platform, and his reactions, they don't create any reaction anymore. He is not part of this world anymore, even if he's here still. So in this way, these verses from 2000, from 1 to 11 to 1 to 21, it explains to us how the Srimad Bhagavatam can help us to go all the way from the elementary stage of understanding the Krishna consciousness, including all other stages of God realization, up to the ultimate stage, ultimate level of becoming free from all material entanglements and attaining our eternal position in pure love of Krishna, right? So all these topics that we studied here, they will be gradually expanded throughout the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Here we are just saying it in a nutshell, in a few words. But later in the Bhagavatam, this will be expanded. But these verses, they give this knowledge in a nutshell, right? So these are very important verses. And then we have something else here. Here. So these are the explanation of the levels of spiritual development that is given in the commentary of Srila Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura. So he connects the verses 16 to 21 of this passage with 14 stages of spiritual development. And he shows how this passage of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it teaches us how to achieve ultimate perfection. It shows how how it goes from the beginning to perfection, right? How everything is there in these 11 verses. So naturally, just understanding this description will not make us pure devotees, but it can help us to at least understand the path forward, right? So I put everything here. So according to his explanation, the verses 16 and 17, they describe the first 5 stages, right? Remember, verse 16 and 17, they are, "O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted." So, okay, here you have the whole list, right? The 14 stages. But from this whole list, the first 5 are described in these 2 verses. So first one is Satan Kripa, right? And this means receiving the mercy of devotees, right? Because, devotees, they have this causeless mercy, right? And when they are merciful to people, they allow them to engage in devotional service, right? So causeless means there is no cause. Devotes their compassion to all, and they're willing to, give mercy to anyone, right? So the mercy of the devotees allows us to come to the second stage, Mahat Seva. And this is service to devotees. By serving devotees, the process of cleansing of the heart starts, right? And then we have number 3. Oh, somehow the list is missing number 3 here. But number 3 is Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. So by serving devotees and associating with them, we acquire some preliminary faith in the process of bhakti, some small faith. This is Shraddha. And this allows us to develop our practice, right? To start. And then we practice. When we become more serious, we come to this 4th stage. And this is Guru Pada Ashraya. And this means seeking the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and surrendering to him, hearing instructions. And what is the difference between friendly association with devotees and the association of the spiritual master? And this Prabhupada answers on Bhagavad Gita 2.7. You can check this later, right? This is part of when Arjuna accepts Krishna as spiritual master. So the point is that when we talk with friends, we may follow or not what they say, right? It's just an opinion. But talks with the spiritual master are serious. So when we accept a spiritual master, we give him authority to correct us and to keep us on the right path. And that's the difference. That's why it's important. And then number 5 is Bhajaneshu Spriha. And this is eagerness to worship the Lord, eagerness to serve. So the point is that by properly following the principles of bhakti, right, under the instructions and example of the spiritual master, one eventually develops a taste for serving the Lord, right? And from this taste of serving the Lord, the desire of material enjoyment, right, is gradually cleansed, right? So, okay, so we have first 5 described in the first 2 verses. Then verse 18 describes 3 more. So we'll read the verse first, and then you see if you can identify here which 3 are covered on verse 18. So verse 18 says, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So the 3 stages that are described in this verse are 6, bhakti, and this means when the, loving devotional service, it starts to manifest. Then number 7 is anartha pagamam, this is the stage where the obstacles on the path, they are cleared, right, gradually. So the anarthas in the heart, they are almost completely removed, and this is the realization of the sentence Nastra Prayeshwa Badreshu of the verse, right? That all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, right? This is the stage where this happens. And then number 8, Tatanista. As a result of this clearing of anarthas, there is finally Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Remember that verse, so important. We can memorize that verse. So when we clear the anarthas, there is finally Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki, right? One becomes steady on the practice of devotional service. And by this practice, by this steadiness, we progress further. Right? And then verse 19, it has 2 more. It says there that as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the facts of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. When the devotee is established in goodness and becomes completely happy. So the 2 verses described in this verse 19 are ruti, and this is taste. At this stage, one develops arucha, that is distaste for material enjoyment, and on the opposite, conversely, he develops this ruchi, this taste for spiritual practice. And this level, it comes as a result of 4 and 5, Guru Padarashaya and Bhajaneshu Spriha, right? So like that we studied earlier, right? So this stage of Bhajaneshu Spriha, number 4, is kind of like preliminary eagerness to serve, to worship, and ruchi is when this taste, it becomes fully manifest, right? When it becomes really strong, real taste. And then we have number 10, Atta Ashakti. And this Atta Ashakti is firm attachment, right? And this is the phase when one becomes, firmly attached to the service of Krishna. That's what he really wants to do. He doesn't want to do anything else, right? And then there are 4 more, right? And these last 4, they are described on verses 20 and 21. So it says that, thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master, right? We studied this verse, right? I'm just repeating them to make this connection with these 14 items. So, okay, so here we have the last 4. So 11 is raiti, and this is foundness, right? In this stage, love of Godhead starts to manifest. One becomes fully satisfied in serving the Lord. And then 12, prema. That's what we are aiming for, pure love. And this is the stage where one's love for Krishna becomes fully manifested, right? So Rati is like dawn, right? That the light of the sun starts to manifest, and prema is like midday when the sun is at its maximum, right? So it starts on 11 Rati, and this love of Godhead grows up to prema. And then there are two levels more. Atadarshanam, this means direct audience. No, following the development of pure love, one starts to directly experience, the Lord's form, pastimes, qualities, and so on. This is Atta Darshan. One sees Krishna. And then Hare Madhurya Nubhava. And in this stage, one's spiritual body is fully manifested and one can fully directly associate with Krishna. That's the final stage, right? And that's what the 14 stages that Srila Visvanatha Chakravarti Thakura gives. And you see, these 11 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it covers all the 14 stages. So even here, right on the second chapter, Bhagavatam is already giving us everything. So no one can say that, oh, there's no Krishna Prema in Bhagavatam. Yes, right here. And of course, later in the Bhagavatam is going to be explained with more details. Then, if we go to Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Madhya Lila, there is another list that is similar, but it has less items, right? This list that is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it starts with Shraddha, faith, then Sadhusanga, association with devotees, then Bhajana Kriya, performance of devotional service under the shelter of the spiritual master. Then Anartha Nivriti, right? We get free of anarthas. Then Nista, we become firm faith, we become steady. Then Ruti, taste. Then Asaki, firm attachment. Then Bhava, love. And then Prema, pure love for Krishna, right? May look a little different, but that's basically the same description. It's just that in this list of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, some of the levels, they are joined together, they're combined. And that's why we have, 9 instead of 14. But the meaning is the same. The sequence is the same, right? And then one important point to mention here is that there is a lot of misunderstanding regarding these levels of bhakti. And many, not very bona fide schools, they concoct, so many different processes to attain the, so-called prema, right? And as far as explained by Lord Chaitanya, however, love for Krishna is an intrinsic part of the soul. It's there. It's what the soul is. It can't be separated. It has just to be awakened through the practice of devotional service. It appears naturally through spiritual practice in the association of pure devotees. Now, and it starts after all, anarthas and other impediments, they are cleared. Now, prema, it doesn't have to be obtained from an external source. It's there already. It just needs to be uncovered. And this is spoken by Lord Chaitanya himself. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22:107, right? Lord Chaitanya himself is speaking. He says, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Saja Kabunai Shravanadi Sudha Chite Karaye Udoi. He says that pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. And that's Lord Chaitanya himself speaking. So there is also the unbona fide processes. And these are described by Prabhupada on Nectar of Devotion. This is chapter 16. I will just read the quote here. It's here on the screen also. So Prabhupada says that the Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of devotional service. They imagine that they have become associates of the Lord simply by thinking themselves like that. This external behavior is not at all according to regulative principles. The so-called Siddha Pranali process is followed by the Prakrita Sahajya, a pseudo-sect of so-called Vaishnavas. In the opinion of Rupa Goswami, such activities are simply disturbances to the standard way of devotional service, right? So Prabhupada makes very clear here, right? Okay, so I'm not going to enter into too much details about that, maybe later. Let's go on. So then, we have the conclusion of this, not the conclusion, like another explanation that finishes, that involves these final verses of this section of the second chapter. So the verses from 1 to 22 and 1 to 28, they compose a separate section inside, the second chapter. And this section explains that one should only serve Krishna, right? Instead of, approaching different demigods for different material results, we should just serve Krishna. Because demigods, they are still part of the material world. They are still like prisoners here, just like us, right? And no prisoner can give freedom to another prisoner, right? Therefore, the fruits of pure devotional service that are described in the previous chapters, they can be bestowed by Krishna alone, right? Only when we worship Krishna. So see here, 22. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. So the point is that the process of devotional service is nothing new. It has been practiced, since the beginning of the universe. Lord Brahma, he meditated in the absolute truth, right, for 100 celestial years at the beginning of his current day. This is narrated in the third canto. We will get there. And as an answer, he was able to see Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan and receive all the Vedas through the sound of Krishna's flute, right? And then the four Kumaras, they were initially impersonalists, but they also became Vaishnavas after feeling, the aroma of the tulasi leaves offered to the Lord. Narada Muni, in his previous life, he was the son of, a maid servant, but he became completely awakened to his, transcendental position by just hearing about Krishna from a group of pure sages. So you see, devotional service comes from since the beginning of the universe. It's nothing new. So another point, one may understand that it's useless to worship, smaller demigods, right? But what about, the worship of the big demigods, like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, right? So the next verse answers this. So the verse says that the transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance. And just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction, he accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness. So this verse, it concludes that only Lord Vishnu can give us the ultimate benefit, right? So Lord Brahma and Shiva, they are departmental heads of the universe in control of the material modes of passion and ignorance. So creation is made possible by Brahma's association with the mode of passion, and the final destruction of the universe happens due to the efforts of Lord Shiva, right, who controls the mode of darkness. So materialistic persons, often they worship Brahma and Shiva for material benefits, but they do so only because of ignorance. For example, Hiranyakashipu, he was a devotee of Lord Brahma, right? Most devotees, most demons, they are devotees of Lord Shiva. However, the limited, material blessings that they obtain, as fruit of this worship of demigods, they can't protect them from ultimate death, right? Hiranyakashipu was killed, right? So in this way, although pure devotees respect demigods as servants of the Lord, they worship only the form of goodness, right? Lord Vishnu, in his various forms, culminating with Krishna, right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there is one quote here from Prabhupada. He mentions in the purport of this verse. He says that the prison house of the material world is created by Brahma under instruction of the personality of Godhead. And at the conclusion of a kalpa, right, at the end of the universe, the whole thing is destroyed by Shiva. But as far as maintenance of the prison house is concerned, it's done by Vishnu, as much as the state prison house is maintained by the state. Anyone, therefore, who wishes to get out of this prison house of material existence, which is full of miseries like repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, must please Lord Vishnu for such liberation. So, to reinforce this point, Srila Sutta Goswami, he describes the comparative value of the modes of the three modes of material nature. And this helps us to understand why the worship of Lord Vishnu is more valuable than the worship of demigods. So he says here, next verse. Sutta Goswami says that firewood is a transformation of art, but smoke is better than the raw wood. And fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge, right, through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, sattva, is best, because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth, right? So what it means. So wood is just it's just gross matter, right? And thus it represents the mode of ignorance. Smoke is a subtle form of matter, and thus is considered better than raw wood. It's more refined. But although smoking itself, like, it's not very useful, right? But still is considered more refined than wood. Fire, however, it is beneficial because one can use fire to perform Vedic sacrifices, right? So in the same way, passion is better than ignorance, but only through the mode of goodness one can obtain, perfect spiritual knowledge and liberate himself from birth and death, right? So, in his Bhakti Sandarbha, Srila Goswami he explains that passion is better than ignorance because from passion one can gradually elevate himself to goodness, right? Something that is impossible when one is in ignorance. So passion is also better than ignorance, because in passion there is impetus to work, right? And one can thus work for Krishna or offer the results of his work from Krishna to Krishna, right? Therefore, the first stage of spiritual life is to elevate ourselves from ignorance to passion, right? By executing, practical services to the pleasure of Krishna. And then from this platform, we can try to gradually elevate ourselves to the mode of goodness, where the, excesses of the mode of passion, they are balanced, and then our vision of the Lord becomes more stable, right? However, if we remain in ignorance, then we will remain, submerged in sleep, lamentation, doubt, illusion, and it will be, practically impossible to go anywhere, right? So first we need to go to passion, and then we need to go to goodness. So, just like beings, in the mode of good ignorance, like ghosts, spirits, materialistic men and demons, they are no the same way they are naturally attracted to worshiping Lord Shiva. Transcendentalists who are in the mode of goodness, they become automatically attracted to the worship of Lord Vishnu, right? Vaishnavas, they worship Lord Shiva, but they worship Lord Shiva as a devotee of the Lord, right? So this worship is fundamentally different from the worship of Lord Shiva as a demigod that the materialists do. It's a completely different thing, right? Vaishnavas, they worship Lord Shiva as an acharya, as a pure devotee. So the process of worshiping the Supreme Lord with the idea of becoming, purified of all material contamination, it has existed since the beginning of the universe, right? Great sages and spiritual authorities, Lord Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, Manu, Kapila, Prahlada, Janaka, Bhishma, Sukadeva Goswami, Bali Maharaja, Yamaraja, the four Kumaras, right? They were all practicing it. However, in our age, this pure knowledge, it becomes covered by this worship of different demigods, right? And different forms of religion practiced for material gain. And these things they become prominent, right? And thus, to counteract this, the Bhagavatam it teaches us the proper goal of life, right? Wonderful, right? And then, okay, then we go to the next verse. We are almost finishing for today. So 25 says that previously all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world, right? And this is okay. This is what we read, 25. So one important point when we speak about the worship of demigods is that while devotees they don't worship them, we shouldn't disrespect them, right? So we don't worship, but we don't disrespect also. So why? Because a devotee respects all living entities. So what to say about the demigods, right? The demigods they are important. They are, the departmental heads of Krishna for the for the management of the material world, right? So some forms of demigods they can be very ghastly, like Mahakali, and all demigods they are temporary. But a devotee who is situated in the mode of goodness, he has no grudge against any demigod or anyone who is worshiping demigods. He's okay with everyone, right? He's not negative towards it. So and then we have the next two verses. So 26 and 27. Those who are serious about liberation are certainly no angels. Speaks about that, see? And they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship those in the same category, namely the forefathers, other living beings, and the demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by a desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny, right? So in reality, these material blessings that are received, by these worshippers of different demigods, they're actually given by Lord Vishnu only. Therefore, even if one has material desires, he should pray to Lord Vishnu instead of worshiping demigods, because anyway, it comes from Lord Vishnu. So it's better to ask directly, right? But still, no, people who are very anxious, for material benefits, they are, impelled by the three modes of nature to worship, these different demigods and different, types of powerful beings. However, they still may be, gradually attracted to the service of Krishna if they have the opportunity of getting in contact with devotees, hear about Krishna, chant the holy names, take prasadam, and so on. Because these activities they purify in an imperceptible way. They change people's consciousness, right? So as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, uh, everything we do should be done as a sacrifice to him, to Krishna. So to understand Krishna and reconnect ourselves with him is the ultimate goal of life. And this ultimate conclusion of the scriptures, it's made clear in the last two verses of the section, and that's finishes for today. This is the last two. So it says there that in the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please Him. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is the supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. Religion, Dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life, right? So no, this verse concludes this point, right? It explains that all the topics described in the Vedas, they have the ultimate goal of bringing us to Krishna. So when the Vedas they recommend, sacrifices and different ceremonies, this is done with the sole purpose of gradually elevating one in the direction of Krishna, right? So when the Vedas, they recommend, worship of demigods, or they speak about the impersonal aspect of the absolute, this is done just to help people who are still, deep in ignorance to start their spiritual path, right? Everything in the Vedas has this ultimate goal of bringing a person to devotional service of Krishna. That's all. That's the only purpose. So similarly, no, when the Vedas, they recommend, practice of meditation, following the rules of the Varnashrama system, all of this is offered with the goal of helping us to gradually come to Krishna. So the same applies to all other categories of knowledge that are offered in the Vedas, right? No, everything is to help us to gradually come to Krishna, right? But when these activities, they are practiced separately from Krishna consciousness, then the real result is lost. One gets only, secondary results. So, so that's all for today. The other verses of this chapter, from 1 to 30 to 1 to 33, they describe the incarnations of the Lord, the Purusha avatars, right? Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashai Vishnu, Kshirodakashai Vishnu, and this we studied already in the second session, right? So I'm not going to repeat today. So, okay, that's everything I had to say for today. And now, if you have any questions, right, we can do some questions now, and hopefully some answers also. If I know the answer, I will try to answer. Or if you have any comments, also can be, you are welcome. So, okay, dear devotees, so please, you can make your comments or ask any question that you may have. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, so I wanted to ask that when we look at the soul, in a way, it's impersonal because what we perceive as personal is our material body, right? And we think this is us. So,
Yes.
the same way, when we say that the Lord isn't just his impersonal form, but his personal form, what exactly do we mean by the Lord's personal form? Is it just his pastimes and activities as maybe his
Mm,
different avatars, or is it something beyond that we can't see, but is
yes.
still considered personal?
Yeah, it's interesting that no, the impersonalists, they argue that is not possible to God to have a personal form, because they understand personal form as a limitation. Because if you
Mm.
don't have a form, you can be like the sky, you can be everywhere. But if you have a form, you are here or you are there, right? That's our
Right,
concept, material concept. So yeah, and materially speaking, that's true. Form means limitation. But the point is that in the spiritual platform, there is no such limitation. So Krishna can have a form and he can be everywhere at the same time. When Mother Yashoda looked inside the mouth of Krishna, she saw the whole universe there inside, because it is inside. Actually, everything is inside the body of Krishna, because nothing exists separately from Krishna. But at the same time, Krishna is there in Vrindavan, right? In
right,
like localizing a particular place. So at the same time, everything is inside his body, but he's there playing in Vrindavan, right? So this form of Krishna is quite inconceivable, right? It's quite difficult to understand
right,
how exactly it works. But that's the difference between material and spiritual. There are so many characteristics of spirit that we can't understand, because they are different from what the experience we have in this world. Like, how can we understand that everything spiritual is never created, that is just eternal? We don't have this experience of
right,
something that is not created. How we can have this idea of a form that is unlimited? We don't have this experience here. So there are so many things in the spiritual platform that we can't understand with using our material intelligence. But if we practice if we follow the devotional process, gradually we can acquire this spiritual intelligence, and this spiritual intelligence allows us to understand these things gradually. With material intelligence, with arguments and counter arguments and so on, we can't understand these points. Then we reach always the wrong conclusion, just like the Mayavadis, right? God has no form,
right,
because we can't understand how he can have a form, right? So
right.
that's the point.
And yes, it is said that the devotee of the Lord is greater than the Lord himself, right? And many people worship demigods, and these demigods are also devotees of the Lord
Mhm.
himself. And we are supposed to respect devotees of the Lord. So,
Yes.
should we still worship demigods as a way of respecting the Lord himself? And let's say if
Mhm.
you're to talk about human devotees, how can we respect them?
Yes. The point is that people, they don't worship demigods as devotees of the Lord. They worship them as separate deities. They see them as
Mhm.
as the same level. You see, in India, it's very common. People put Ganesha, Lakshmi, and I don't know who
Right,
else, and Durga and Krishna, same altar, one beside the other, because they see them all
right,
the same. It's on the same level, right? They don't see
right.
difference. They don't see that, oh, Krishna is the boss and the others are just, his devotees. So that's first problem.
Hmm.
Second problem is that, yeah, one could worship demigods with the idea of them being devotees of the Lord. But then there is another problem. They are not pure devotees. So that's also
Mhm.
not proper worship. Only in certain circumstances, demigods, they are worshipped in connection with the Lord, but not like as a separate deity also. So that's why Vaishnavas, they respect all demigods, but they don't worship them.
Right. Would
Mhm.
Srila Prabhupada be considered a pure devotee?
Yes, of course. Pure devotees, they are different from demigods. Pure devotees, they
Hmm.
are they are worshipped because they are because pure devotees, we understand they are not separate gods, right? They are servants of Krishna, and we respect and
Right.
worship them like that. We don't worship Prabhupada as separate God. We worship Prabhupada in connection with Krishna. So this worship of pure devotees, it's perfect. Krishna actually becomes more satisfied when we worship his devotees than when we personally worship him.
Mhm.
Right? That's actually the recommended process. So actually, instead of worshiping demigods, we should worship pure devotees of Krishna. About pure devotees being higher than Krishna, there is a difference between tattva and rasa. Tattva is what it really is, technically speaking. And of course, technically speaking, of course, Krishna is God, so he's higher than everyone.
Right.
But then there is rasa, that is the way Krishna sees it, the sentiment. And
Hmm.
Krishna sees his devotees as higher than himself. Understand? So in this sense, devotees are higher than Krishna.
Right, because if you were to think about it, though, of course, we have Krishna, Vishnu as the boss of everyone, but we as servitors and employees of this boss are still trying our best despite our position. So it's in that way, right?
Yes,
That we're still trying our best despite what we have.
yes, exactly. No.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you for your question, Hare Krishna. So anything else has anything more, or if you have any comment also, uh make your comment, you are welcome. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so if we don't have no questions nor comments, then we can finish for today. Today the session was a little long because these 11 verses, they are really very deep. They explain so much, and then I felt that we needed to give some attention to them, right? And then the next session we will study about Krishna's incarnations and a little bit more about ourselves, about the souls, how what we are doing here in the material world. And then after that, it will start, where we will start going a little quicker through the chapters. Right? We are taking time to study, in details these first three chapters because these chapters, they are very foundational. In the third chapter that we will see next time, there is one verse that is very important. Is defined by Srila Jiva Goswami as the Paribhasa Sutra of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the main verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You need to study the whole Bhagavatam according to this verse. If you don't do it, you may misunderstand. So that's one. This is a verse in the third chapter, so we will study this also. No, we can't miss this one, right? It's very important, like the key to unlock, all the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we will see this also. So thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. All
Hare
glories to Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada. So
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you again next week.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Tantara Prabhu.
Thank you for everyone for coming. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Bol.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.